Hello, 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 and welcome, welcome. We are so glad that you are here for our webinar to talk about the history of Black love. Absolutely. Yes, come on in. And as you come in, typically we ask that you behave as you would in a face to face workshop. You would come in and speak to everyone. So we would ask that as you enter, that you share where you're hailing from today and just say hello to everyone. We really appreciate that. Yeah, come on in. Come on in and welcome. Yes. And as you come in, get comfortable and say hello. Exactly. Hello, Jeff from North Carolina. It's good to see
Hey,
you.
hey, Dr.
Aha. And Hank from Rochester. Have we met? Because I do an annual training in Rochester with the Rochester Teacher Center, right? So I'm wondering if we've met. Oh, look at that. Love it. Maryland and Missouri, Wisconsin, Michigan, New Jersey, Minnesota. Oh, I see. Wonderful. Wonderful. Will there be certificates? Yes, you can request a certificate if you need one. Absolutely. We can send you one out that demonstrates that you were here and you participated. Absolutely. So just email me, and you can email me at CEO at CRESTSprogram.com. Hi, Sandra. How you doing? Uh, or you can email us at CRESTprogram at gmail.com. Either of those will do that. Oh, I see y'all are connecting. I see the Michigan folks trying to connect. Exactly. Exactly. I love that. I love that. And Texas. So, how far is Arlington, Texas from Austin? Because we'll be in Austin next week. We'll be there by Tuesday. We will have settled in at the convention center for the ESEA conference. Exactly. Exactly. Oh my goodness, it's so good to see you all here. I heard that there's some bad weather coming to Virginia. And so there were some folks who let us know that they will be trying to get to safety because there's supposed to be ice and snow and so on. And so I definitely agree. Get to safety. Yes, yes, absolutely. Good, good. Come on in. I love it. Oh, on time, people. I love it. Come in on time. Absolutely. Ah, so there's snow in Boston. Yeah, isn't there always snow in Boston?
Whoa, Nova Scotia in the
I
house.
know our Canadian friends, our
Hmm.
cousins, they always show up. I love it. And not far from Canada, we have Brockport, New York. Love it. Up at SUNY Brockport. Absolutely. Love it. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming today. That's right. With all this stuff going on in the world, we appreciate you coming and spending your time with us. So we will continue to encourage you as you come in to say hello. So we'll do that, but we're going to get started. And just a reminder, you see this announcement that's showing right now is that if you use social media, we would really appreciate it if you let people know what they're missing if they're not here about how enjoyable the session is. So we will get started, and we always begin with our opening jingle designed by Dr. Michael White. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. So today we're talking about our topic is No Mountain High Enough, the History of Black Love. And we're doing something a little bit different today. Normally we provide you with social science research so that everything that we talk about is evidence-based. And so we'd like to bring to you up-to-date research. Today, we're also including humanities research, which is a little bit different. So humanities research often provides us with historical research or literature research. So it's slightly different. And so we're going to mix it up, which means that it'll be a little bit more interactive and I hope a little more emotive today. And so let us know. We have with us Dr. Ebony White. You will not see Dr. Bo or Sasha or Jonay today. And of course, always with me, Dr. Constance West. And just as a reminder, I'm Dr. Cirecie West-Olatunji. That's our team. We're always looking for more folks to join us. So if you think you'd like to join the CREST program team, hit me up. And just to give you an idea of what's going on about our products and services, we will share with you just to remind you. At the heart of CREST program is decolonized training. This is warranted in education, mental health, medicine, and parenting, to name a few. Whatever the setting, we have all been influenced by the cultural hegemony that permeates our professions. At CREST program, our courses specifically address race-based stress and promote intergenerational resilience. Our videos on demand come in various packages, including full credential programs that replace conventional coursework, individual workshops, and numerous lecture series. We also customize training programs to meet your organization's or group's needs uniquely. Now, we know that some of you are dedicated members of the CREST program community. Isn't it time to acquire some CREST program merch? Check out our online marketplace. In addition to the umbrellas, blankets, and tote bags, we offer resources to apply in your work with Black youth and other children of color. Before we forget, remember to complete the post-webinar survey. Your comments will help us enhance our programming and determine new topics for education and training. Finally, we encourage you to follow us on social media and share our posts within your social network. Thank you for your support. Great. And just a couple of reminders. Of course, we love donations. We want to remind everyone that we are not a nonprofit. And right now, in the environment we're in, that's probably a good thing, that we are not dependent upon certainly any government funding. So it's really up to you. If you're enjoying what we're offering, support us so that we can stay on the air and share this information. Also, our Winter Spring Uplift newsletter is out. It's on the website. And please, if you haven't checked out our blog posts, you should. So if you want to get a little bit of us between the webinars, we are bringing it on the blog posts. And so every week we have a new topic that we're talking about with additional resources. Also, Dr. White has her concept paper that's been delivered, and it is hot off the press. So check it out, and also an interview. So if you want to see her being interviewed by Dr. Kimberly Bowe, you can check that out. I already mentioned we're going to be in Austin next week. So all you Texas folks, hopefully you're planning to be there. If not, and if you're in the Austin area, please let us know. We'd love to meet you for coffee or something like that. And then finally, we're launching the podcast series. We've got a lineup of some great topics and great guests. Dr.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking to you more about our plans. Um, so if you look at the save the date image here, you can see that we started off January talking about the power of partnerships. And we had with us probably our most impactful partnership to date. So we have with us three panelists from Global Health Action here in Atlanta, Georgia, representing a number of different groups on the international level. And we talked about some of the lessons learned in our development of that partnership and the expansion of that partnership. And so if you missed that, you have an opportunity to have access to the recording from that video, from that webinar, which should be up soon. So if you missed it,
It's already up. It
it's
is
already.
up and available, and it is also in our free webinar section. So yeah, you can access it now.
Oh, excellent. Okay, so we're on it. That was just a couple of weeks ago. And of course, today we're focusing on the history of Black love with No Mountain High Enough. Next month, Dr. Ebony White will take the lead, and she will be talking about loss, grief, and incarceration, which will be part two in a series of three lectures that she will be delivering. And in April, we'll be focusing on being unapologetically Black. In May, we always focus on mothers. And in June, we have our spotlight on Black fathers. So just so you have an idea of what's up to date. And right now, you can go ahead and register for Dr. White's webinar that will be on March 18th. You can go ahead and register within Eventbrite.
So what you came for, we're ready to deliver.
Right. So we're going to go ahead and put the link to the March webinar registration in Eventbrite in the chat while I talk to you about the learning objectives. So today, we wanted to achieve three different goals. The first is to enhance your knowledge about Black love throughout history. We want to make sure that we provide you with information that is useful to you as you engage and work as an educator, a parent, a mental health practitioner, a juvenile justice worker, or other individual working with Black youth and other youth of color. That would be beneficial to enhance self-love and more healthier relationships that Black youth have with their parents, with one another, with other individuals in the community. We also want to enhance your awareness about the impact of anti-Black attitudes on the health and well-being of Black youth. So that's both in terms of their physical health and mental health. And lastly, we want to expand your skill set to include culture-centered, trauma-informed interventions that in what you do. So we want to be able to provide you with some interventions that will enhance the efficacy of the work that you do to intervene with Black youth and other youth. So enhance your knowledge, awareness, and skill set is what we aim to do today in this short amount of time that we have with you. So let's get at it.
So yes, let's get started. So I have a video that I want to show, and then I'll talk a little bit about these bullet points. So let's see. Over centuries, maybe millennia, Black love has been vilified. We've been buked, scorned, talked about as sure as you're born. Others have tried to tell the story of Black love, but it still shows up as anti-Blackness. Until we believe it is so and tell our own stories of Black love, our children will never know self-love. So join CRESTSprogram as we create counter-narratives to anti-Blackness in the news, on the screen, at our jobs, and in our schools. All right. So what we understand from the research that's out there, both in the humanities and the social sciences, is that Black love exists within a toxic environment of anti-Blackness. And we see it everywhere. We see it in the media in terms of the way in which Black people are portrayed. We see it in the various curricula. We see it in policy. We see it everywhere. Black people are measured against Eurocentric values. It's like being X in an old world. So we're always going to come up short. We're always going to look anormal. We're always going to look abnormal, even when we are constantly measured against a Eurocentric aesthetic. So not only is this something that we experience interpersonally, meaning in our interactions with people from the mainstream, but also we see it structurally. We see it in the how research is conducted, and research is important. A lot of people shy away from engaging in a conversation about research of any kind, thinking that it really belongs to some other people, that that's their responsibility or that's their ability, their intellectual prowess to engage in research, and that it doesn't belong to us. But research belongs to everyone. The problem is that when we have racist or racism embedded in the way in which research is conducted, is that it fuels institutional policies. And those policies impact us in housing, education, employment, healthcare, and so on, structurally throughout. Probably in the US, the most, I think, visible time when that's happened was in the 1960s, when a lot of policies were developed about Black people. For instance, the Moynihan Report, that basically spread a lot of anti-Blackness concepts about this dysfunctional Black family, and so on. But those attitudes persist today, those beliefs persist today, and programming. So those of us who are in community-based organizations or in nonprofit organizations that provide services to disenfranchised communities, a lot of the bases for the programs that are developed are based on this hegemonic, racist, toxic research. And so we just perpetuated unknowingly. The impact on Black children is that they internalize these negative stereotypes about themselves. So when they're never the hero in a story, they think Black people can't be heroes. When they're never the smart one or the beautiful one, they think Black people can't be beautiful or can't be smart. So it's important for us to think about that and to recognize that we need to actively and intentionally counter anti-Black narratives and beliefs. So that means we can't be passive. We can't be passive and just buy what everybody else buys. We can't have the same books that everybody else buys, that's popular, that's in the news, that is easily accessible via the internet or anywhere. What we have to do is really think about it and think about, oh, okay, I don't have to get this book. Instead, I can get that book because that book presents the hero as a kid who looks like my child. So this is true whether we're talking about Black children or brown children, whether we're talking about indigenous children. The same thing is that we really do need to be intentional about the ways in which we share the world, the ways in which we introduce the world, the ways in which the children's world and environment reflects who they are and who they can be. So we need to first recognize that we live in a world that is anti-Black. It's just a fact. It's anti-Black. And so how do we counter that? We do it by actions that are active and intentional. Overcentric. Second, we want to present Black love as enduring and abiding. And we have lots of examples in history that presents Black love as being just that. So Black love, what we know again from literature, is that Black love recognizes the importance of emotional intimacy over materialism. And one would say that given that we've been locked out economically and financially for generations, that we recognize, well, hey, that is not something that we can afford to be concerned about materialism. At least historically, that's been the case. And so what we've done is to focus on who's real, who can I trust, who can I rely on, right? And we think about that, those things as being criteria for establishing deep emotional ties in which we express our love and affection for other people. And these are values that we need to pass on to our children because in the world, you get a different message, and that message comes from a different culture where this other culture perhaps focuses on materialism, on the individual, right? And so it's important for us to intentionally pass on these values. Black love requires creativity in navigating economic and political oppression. So, how do we, in our relationships with each other, how do we still love despite all the challenges, despite historical trauma, despite intergenerational trauma, despite race based stress? How do we still find time to love each other, to find intimacy, to find warmth and caring and compassion? How do we do that? And how do we transmit that to our children? Black love is invisible to mainstream society. So it's important for us to really take a look at that, for us to think critically about that, for us to explore that and express that. A lot of times, if you have not been introduced to this concept, you need to take a moment and do a little bit of your own research and look around. So this is whether you are a member, right? You are within group, or you are an ally of another cultural or ethnic group. It is an opportunity for you to really open up and become much more sensitive to the negativity, to Blackness within not only society, but I would say globally. It certainly is something that is present on the internet, which means it is being presented and shared and integrated across nations. So it's something to think about that Black love is invisible. I'll give you one example of that. I remember I was teaching graduate students in a program, and I had the students to go out and do observations at one of the local Title I schools. So this is a low resource school. It was about 98% Black, and it was an elementary school. So I had the students observing when the kids are dropped off for school, maybe in school, with the lunchroom, in the classroom, and also when they were being picked up at the end of the day. Well, and we would come back to class every week and discuss what they saw and process it. Well, one student brought back in class an observation of a father saying goodbye to his son, and his son was maybe 5 or 6 years old, so a little tiny kid. And as the father dropped his son off, he didn't drive off. He just drove alongside the kid as his son was walking to school. He drove alongside at about, very slowly, 5 miles an hour. And as they were doing that, the kid would say, "Bye, Dad, I love you." And the father would say, "I love you too, son." And then the kid would walk on a little further and he'd say, "I love you, Dad." And the father would say, "I love you too, son." And this went on until the child reached the walkway to the front of the school and the father drove off. But it impressed the student in my class so very much, who's a white student, who said to the class, who disclosed, "I have never seen Black love before." And what she was meaning, she explained, was that her only introduction to Black people was from television or the movies, right, from the screen. And what was being projected was conflict. So a lot of familial conflict, a lot of emotional conflict between family members, between loved ones, and so on. And that she had never seen that. To see it spontaneous, to see it in real life, to see it organic, changed her world. It blew her mind and changed her in a way that was very important. She is an amazing advocate these days and a wonderful ally who works very hard toward this. So this idea of invisibility of Black love is real. Black love is the mainstay of Black families and Black excellence. And again, we're talking about Black love in relation to work with Black youth and other children of color. So it is the cornerstone of Black excellence. Black children cannot achieve if they are not loved, if they don't know love, if they can't express love. That's important. If they don't have self-love. Black love is a counter narrative to anti-Blackness. It's an anecdote to anti-Blackness. Black love sustains, Black love is. And what I want to share with you right now is a video of this brother from Australia. I don't know if we have folks who are on in Australia right now. Sometimes we do. And so I've had an opportunity to interact with some of our brothers and sisters from the Aboriginal, from the Indigenous people in Australia who see themselves as part of the African diaspora. And so this young brother, it provides us with a poem, and I just thought it was so beautiful. I wanted to share it with you.
How you doing, everyone? My name is Luke Curry Richardson, also known as Bala Luke on the socials. And I am coming to you from Gadigal land of the Eora Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past, present, and my peers who will be our future elders and leaders. I'm a very proud Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander man, storyteller. My father's side, I'm a Kuki-Yalanji Jabakai man, also a Miriam man from the Torres Straits. My mother's side, I'm a Mananjali and Bachelor. I'd like to give a big shout out to Red Room Poetry for allowing me to tell my stories and express my poetry on their platform. So appreciate y'all, and I hope you enjoy. The title of my poem is called Black Love. BLAKLOVE. Enjoy. I want that type of black love, like the first steps on your traditional country and the first breaths of the traditional air. You just know you belong. Words can't explain that level of comfort, but you know you're being looked after and you can be yourself on these lands. On that type of black love, like you bring the damper out the coals and you know it's just right. I want that type of black love to take over me like a smoking ceremony, cleansing me and healing me. Lead the way all around me, in my face so it can ground me. Sometimes it gets in your eyes and tears fall, but it's never for long. It's always healing, the smell of safety and healing, the feeling of welcoming. On that type of black love, like I need to ask you who's your mob, and you ask mine, and I run to mum and dad just to double check if it's fine, which it is. Then I lay down my next black fella line on you. We ain't mob. I want that type of black love where black mob refer to us as black royalty, but we're just out here being carefree black beauties, doing our duties for the future of our black communities. I want that type of black love when I walk into a place with the brother boys and you're with the sister girls who know exactly what's going on, and they'd be like, while unapologetically nudging you, trying to make you shame for everyone to see. I want that type of black love that helps heal our traumas, navigating this world, surviving the city life, or trying to reclaim, connect to the traditional ones as black people. I want that type of black love that goes into each other to go into our people. I want to walk hand in hand at protest as a wall of black strength beauty and power so we can both burn down these systems together. I want that type of black love where we plant the seed among the hate and gunpowder and out sprouts this black flower, showering this country in more black pride and power. I want that type of black love where I can go out and be this modern day warrior, then come home and surrender to my blackness, where only you and I exist, finding peace in a melanated moment. I want that type of black love that sets an example for our judges and shows them that this type of black love exists. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I want that type of black love. Absolutely. So, whoo, it's hot, steamy. So we want you to put in the chat some words that capture your exposure to or experiences of giving or receiving Black love. So, I've got a poem up by Evie Shockley, amazing poet. You can read that, but please, please share in the chat. We want to hear from you. What's going on? We've said a lot so far. You've heard lots of and seen and experienced lots. Now we want to hear from you. What is going on? What has been your experience? What brings you here? Yes, yes, yes. Wonderful. Hi, Tyler. Absolutely, absolutely. Unconditional acceptance, timeless, defies and feeds the soul. It's healing. Oh, I love that part. Yes. Yes. Connecting to the struggle. Yes. 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 Love is enduring. It is. And it's joyful. It's grounding. I love that. Thank you, Renee. It's grounding. Absolutely. Isn't that something? That something can be so powerful and yet so peaceful. It just is. It is so beautiful. Yeah. I am so sorry, Nadia. Yeah. I'm so sorry about that. I'm glad you're here. And I hope you feel Black love here. Absolutely. Black love is deep. Black love is the purpose. That's someone on their phone. And I would say Black love is also on perfect purpose. Absolutely. Absolutely. Safety is important. It's very spiritual, Tanya. Absolutely. And transformative, Sandra. Absolutely. Absolutely. It is why we are still here. It's because of Black love. Absolutely. Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype. Black love exists. It's here. We're in it. We're experiencing it. Yes, Black love is the only way. Yes, exactly. Oh, y'all are giving me chills. Giving me chills. Wow, absolutely. Evie says, oh, I have a little time. Good. Evie Shockley. I discovered this poet, didn't know her before. She's gotten a lot of awards for her poetry, and I'm just so happy that she's being acknowledged. So I'm just discovering her and sharing her with all of you. My love is Black, though my love is not Black. Think the darkness cradling the Milky Way. Imagine quick light flowing down the back of my throat, glowing. I swallow the day. My love is Black, an absorbing array of colors, gold yolk escaping the cracked shell, a shiny silver moon coin to play, a juicy peach, plums, cup of cognac. My love is black, the only way I know to live, now fierce and demanding, now free and unpossessed. So for my magnet, my love becomes steel. Then for my butterfly, will not a flower, but a whole field be. My love and my blackness together go. Awesome, awesome. You should check out her work. Absolutely. So, Dr. West.
Yeah, wow. I am very full. Just having heard all the poetry and all the comments in the chat. And so it feels a little weird to go from that to some statistics from some of the research, but we'll do that. And I'm going to try to intertwine that with some maybe personal experiences, clinical experiences, et cetera, to illustrate it. So in terms of the parent role, most of you probably already know this, but I just wanted to put some research out there and remind us, because there's a whole lot that's said about Black families that isn't always very positive. And so we want to make sure that we highlight that even in the midst of some of the challenging statistics that we know that cause quite a bit of distress for families, whether we're talking about income or education or the rate of Black marriages, et cetera, that there's a whole lot of positive aspects as well that we need to highlight. So I've pulled out a few of them. So number one, in terms of looking at the role of a parent, whether we're talking about mothers, fathers, grandparents, anyone who's a caregiver, what we find is that Black and Hispanic parents are more likely than white and Asian parents to say that the number one most important aspect of their identity is being a parent. I'm not sure that's always very apparent when we talk about Black parents. So if that's the number one aspect of who parents are when they're Black and Hispanic, what does that say in terms of how does that translate to the way in which they parent and the way in which they interact with teachers, mental health professionals, juvenile justice system, et cetera, and how should that impact how we interact with them? That's an important piece. So similarly, Black and Hispanic parents are more likely to describe parenting as being enjoyable and rewarding. Not that they don't say it's also challenging, but they're more likely to report it to also be enjoyable and rewarding as an experience. In terms of family interactions, Black individuals compared to their white counterparts tend to report having more family members in their support networks compared to friends, and to rely more heavily on support from family members. So we're talking about biological family members and or family members related to them by marriage. We'll get to other types of relationships later. They also report having more daily contact with family members. And this is even more pronounced when we look at within group differences, where we see African Americans being more likely to report having more frequent contact with family members than do Caribbean Blacks or non-Hispanic white. Next slide.
Oops. All right.
You want to go back to that same wonderful poem? Move forward. Sometimes it's important to repeat something that's that good. So in terms of what we call fictive kin, and then one of those things, I wish we could get rid of that term. I hate that term, fictive kin, because it says there are real kinfolk, and then there's some ones that are fake or unreal. But if we define it, we're talking about individuals who are not related to you by blood or marriage, but are still considered to be family members with the same, similar, even more rights, respect, title, responsibilities, and or duties than those who are related to us by blood or marriage. What you'll see is, I know I'm a Black person, but sometimes when someone says, this is my brother, I'm like, brother, as in you're the parent of your parents, or a child of your parents, your biological parents, or you mean like a brother, people say brother from another brother. So it's kind of this thing of trying to figure out, well, all right, what are we really talking about? And I have to share this example. Let me share the stats first. So Black people are more likely to have people that are termed as fictive kin. So that's more like a yes, no. Do they have any family members that they consider to be family that are not related by blood or marriage? And to have a higher number of those individuals. I'll have to share this story. I remember when I was a little girl, went to school, and our teacher, somehow we must have been talking about family, and our teacher who was Caucasian. Actually, one of my favorite teachers went through and wanted to describe how family members are family members, right? And she went down this list of what it is to be a family member. And I remember thinking, I have all these aunts, aunt so and so, and these are they actually an aunt? Because if it's only supposed to be the sibling, female sibling of my parents, that's going to limit the number of people. I only had two, whereas I had probably like 20 or something. So I was like, all right, let's go through these aunts. I went to sit down with my mom. I said, okay, mom, I'm making a list of my real aunts, not my fake aunts. Like who? She was like, what do you mean? She got so upset with me. She was like, who told you that the only aunts that you have are those who are the sisters of your parents? And I was like, my teacher. She goes, well, that's not true. And she would not divvy them up. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to do this on my own. Okay. Because it's like, if that's true, I'm gonna have to make a list of all the people I consider to be an aunt and figure out which one of these people are So it was like, okay, so we go down this list, and then my mom was like, that is not fair. She was so upset. She didn't go to school or talk to anybody, but I remember her being so upset because it really violated a cultural rule that an aunt is an aunt, not based upon blood or marriage necessarily, but by the nature of the relationship, right? And so it becomes, if they function like an aunt, they care for you and they are involved in your life and they make sacrifices for you. You know, some of them make me clothing from scratch and other people cook for me all the time, maybe more so. When I remember I figured it all out, I thought, you mean to tell me, Aunt so-and-so is not my biological aunt? I mean, she does more than my biological aunt. And it was like, I felt like, oh my God, my whole world had been turned upside down because based upon how they function versus officially, a relationship, that it didn't seem to be much of a link between the two, right? And it was like, well, okay, I'm gonna count her as my aunt anyway. I'm gonna go with the way we do it. The other thing is, of course, in a lot of African cultures and people in the African diaspora, is that any elderly person, older person, you might call your aunt. So all these people are auntie. People call you auntie, even though you're not necessarily related by blood or marriage. So this could include family members that are something other than that. I'm aunt to some of my cousins, which is really funny. I was like, how do I get this card? Do I say to my niece or nephew? It's really my cousin, but they call me auntie. So it's this whole thing of this role that we have. And from a cultural standpoint, it's like you are what your function is and not necessarily what you are officially, I guess, in the more dominant society. So it could be family members who are not actually the actual role that you call them or the title that you've given them. It could be peers, neighbors, elders in the neighborhood, members of one's religious group. So there's this big group. So when people talk about not having family, I'm thinking, oh my God, I have so many family members, independent of the way in which they're related to me. So that's that piece. So there's a whole broad, this love that actually is spread across the community, right? That is broader and bigger in terms of this idea of who's family than what is traditionally seen in American culture. In terms of caregiving, this is an area that I worked in when I first started working in the area of psychology. Before I even went to grad school, I worked at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. And I worked in a family caregiver research project with Dr. William Haley, and I actually cited one of his studies. But in terms of caring for the elderly, so we've already talked about the ways in which Black parents view their role as being super important and to be the most important aspect to who they are. We talked about extended family. We talked about fictive kid or people being what their function is and their role in the community more so than by blood or marriage. Now we're talking about the degree to which family members are willing to and engage in caregiving related activities. And what we find is that non-Hispanic Black individuals report, who are over 70 years of age, report that they receive home-based family caregiving at a higher rate, not much higher, but significantly higher rate than non-Hispanic white individuals of the same age group. And what we see among family caregivers who are African American or Black, what we see is that they report higher levels of filial responsibility. They report higher levels of caregiver-related self-efficacy. So we asked them about their ability to do, like globally, just in general, how do they feel in terms of their caregiving efficacy? But we go down this list of different things in terms of toileting assistance, and in terms of, preparing meals, and in terms of, assisting with, taking their family members to the doctor and handling medication regimens and all these specific tasks, African American or Black family members tend to report having a much higher level of self-efficacy. So let's say they feel really good about their ability to handle that. One of the things I didn't talk about is that Black families and parents tend to report higher levels of self-efficacy in terms of parenting than other groups. So that is a common finding across these different types of caregiving. Black family caregivers of elderly patients also report lower levels of depression, caregiver stress, and caregiver burden. So what we typically see amongst caregivers of elderly patients, particularly amongst caregivers of dementia patients, is that there are increased levels of depression, anxiety, overall stress levels, and they report high levels of caregiver burden, right? They also report in general, like globally, decreases in their physical health. And that actually does apply to all caregivers, independent of race. So Black caregivers do report decreases in their physical health, perceived physical health, as well as a much higher level of physical health symptom reporting. But what we see is that in terms of depression, caregiver stress, and caregiver burden, we see a much lower level because it's their role in that situation tends to be consistent with their cultural values about what children do, what family members should do for the elderly. And so that has a less of an impact on them from a mental health standpoint. They also, Black family caregivers of elderly patients also report higher levels of caregiver-related duties. So they're doing a lot more, doing a higher level of intensity of activity, as well as more frequent activities related to caregiving. And they also report receiving more help from family members. So, of course, all caregivers tend to report that they can use a little bit more help. And as a family caregiver, I'm going to say I can use more help too. But the idea is that it is more of a community effort when we look at. And so one of the things that I noticed when I worked in the Family Caregiver Research Project, and I'm just going to give you some anecdotal examples, is that I would go to, when I often went to, because I did the research in the homes, so we went to the homes of the family caregivers and we conducted really very lengthy interviews, and we would often help them complete their questionnaires. And what we would find a lot of times is that, and both in terms of the observations that I made in terms of the interactions between the caregivers and the patients, as well as their report of their ability to handle the stress, I would notice that a lot of Black families would say things like, yeah, I've done a whole lot of other things. Either they had prior experience providing care, either they had a job where they did that, or they had prepared for it. They always expected that they would be the one to take care of their family member, so it wasn't a shock. A lot of the Caucasian families reported that they did not expect or anticipate that they would have that role, that they anticipated that that person maybe would have saved up enough money so that they could maybe go to a facility that would provide them with a high level of care. So it was sort of a departure from their expectation of what they should be doing at that point in their lives. Whereas for a lot of Black families, they were reporting that, yes, I anticipated this. In fact, it happened maybe a little bit later than I anticipated, a little bit earlier than I anticipated. But yes, my plan. Well, I had already accepted that that was going to be my role and that it wasn't a major life change from their expectations for their, middle age or senior year. Okay, next slide. So we have a Zoom poll for you. So the question for you to answer is, how do anti-Black attitudes in society impact Black children? So this is really about attitudes about negative perceptions and attitudes about what Black love looks like or Black relationships look like, right? What it looks like to have platonic love amongst Black people, or the love of a parent with a child, or the love of 49 friends, male friends. I know people have talked about that is becoming more seen on screen, but so how do we expect, or what have we seen about the impact of some of these negative attitudes about Black love and their impact on Black children, how they see themselves, how they see the world, if at all? Yeah, overwhelmingly so far. Oh my God, 32 people have already answered. Okay. I'll tell you, one of my favorite things about these webinars is you guys, I'm telling you, I always say locked and loaded. You guys are ready. I don't know how much prep you do before these webinars, but you guys are ready. You usually have a lot of suggestions, ideas, examples, resources that you share in the chat. And you guys are always on it when we pose a question in the chat within Zoom or the poll within Zoom. You guys are always on it. And you can see, hope it doesn't impact the answer you were going to provide. Yeah.
Okay.
Overwhelmingly.
Yeah, we've had it up. So I think we're ready to share with everybody
It's
what.
already sharing. I think. Can you guys see it?
No, they cannot.
Oh,
No,
they cannot.
they
Okay.
cannot. So, yeah, so thank you so much. We have almost 70% of you participating in the poll. That's awesome. As researchers, that's a great percentage. We appreciate that. So, now we're sharing. Now everybody can see.
Just about everybody said yes, it affects their self-worth and self-esteem in terms of it being an adverse effect, so negatively affecting those things. Absolutely. So it's like, okay, when people have negative perceptions or attitudes about what Black love looks like regard to parenting or caregiving, or in terms of romantic relationships, platonic relationships, etc. Yes, it ends up damaging the self-esteem and self-worth of Black children. And then we expect them to do what? To be successful in the classroom, to be happy and healthy. No, we have to be able to counter those attitudes. And there are quite a few attitudes out there. I think some of that is changing. We have a whole lot more positive images than we used to, you know. But there's still work that needs to be done so that we can make sure that our children grow up in a healthy environment. So I know we're going to talk about some interventions. Uh, so let us move on. Thank you for everyone who answered the poll.
All right. So, this is our Q&A period. And so I don't see any questions in the Q&A section. Does anybody see that? So any questions or comments? Anything that you wanted to hear or need to hear in this discussion about Black love, particularly as it relates to working with Black youth and other children of color? Anything? Mm-hmm. So we have an amen corner here, but let's see. Exactly. Yeah, so Aisha said this is wonderful to listen to like-minded individuals validating and affirming Black love. Yeah, I don't think, Aisha, that we do that often enough. I think sometimes we get caught in the cycle of talking about what's problematic about Black people. And we don't realize that that's sort of been scripted by others, where funding is really around how problematic Black people are. Black children are problematic. Their learning is problematic. Their behaviors are problematic. Black parenting is problematic. And so if you want to ensure that you get funding, frame it that way. That's what gets funded. I often say when I'm talking to educators, uh, everybody's concerned about why Johnny or Jamal can't read. But when we ask the question, why can't teachers teach Jamal? That's a different question. And it's a question that needs to be answered. And so we need to really contextualize these things. We need to be aware and conscious of anti-Blackness in the world in which we live and the impact that it has on Black children. Just like you all melted when you heard the brother from Australia to provide his poetry about Black love, We want our children to melt like that. And, let me also speak to some of our allies who are here today with us and their work, who clearly, if you're here, you are committed to Black excellence. You're committed to ensuring that Black children can achieve at amazing levels that we are not currently seeing. So I appreciate that. So the question is, how do you foster Black love? What are ways in which that can happen? Of course, we're going to talk about that in a couple of more slides to be able to share with you. But it's for everyone. No one is left out of this. We're not saying that if you're not within group, that you can't foster Black love. You most certainly can. So we're all held accountable for this. We all need to be a part of this. I see Renee has a question. What advice would you give to younger generations seeking to build and maintain strong, loving Black relationships? Just that, Renee, is the start of talking about strong, loving Black relationships, right? So a lot of times when I talk about Black love, so I'll just talk about me, and Dr. White and Dr. West can chime in. When I talk about Black love, I make it all inclusive. So a lot of times we talk about Black love, like Valentine's Day is coming up, right? And it's like people are thinking about romantic love. But you can't get to romantic love if you don't love yourself and you don't have loving relationships with other people. It just won't happen. You can't jump over self-love to get to romantic love. Exactly. Somebody's giving me some emojis. That's right. Because I grew up in a Baptist church. So I want to hear something back. Y'all talk to me. Right. So absolutely. If you don't have self-love, you can't get to romantic love. If you don't have self-love, you can't get to Black excellence. If you don't have self-love, you don't have any friends. Not really. Come on now. Come on now. Don't leave me now. Don't leave me now. If you don't have Black love, you really don't have any friends, right? And it's important. The other thing is that Black love is so related to our socio-political experience, and we don't connect the two, right? Whenever I am with people, and I'm associated with a lot of people, but when I think about people who are close to me, I'm always asking myself in the back of my mind, if something goes down right here, can I trust that person? Is that person there? Are they with me? Are they gonna step back? Right? That's not gonna be about it. When I talk about Black love, I'm for real. So when we know we have lots of challenges, right? So, all right, then when we get to romantic love, let's start off, right? The earliest known love story is the story of Osiris and Isis, right? Those are the Greek names, right? The Egyptian names, right? What the people called themselves was Asar and Aset. This is the earliest known love story in the world. And this is a story where when Asar died, guess what? Aset went and grabbed him out of death and brought him back. Now, people talk about that as the myth of this early love story. But when we think about the history of wherever you're coming from, whether you're in the UK, my brothers and sisters in the UK, whether you're in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, right, the Caribbean, right, anywhere you're hailing from the continent, we all have stories about Black love, right, where we did extraordinary things. Here in the United States, we have a preponderance, right, of stories where people went back. People did all kinds of things, right? We think about love stories. We know that when they brought out the stories in the Library of Congress of what was going on, the slave narratives, they're called, about what people did at the risk of death, to just have a moment to just hug and squeeze somebody that we loved for just a few moments, and then traverse back under risk of death to get back to wherever they were enslaved. And they knew that. So the memory, the thought, just the idea of knowing that someone loves you and will do anything, right, to buy your freedom, you know. So there are lots and lots and lots of stories that we have in various contexts around the world that celebrate who we are. So it's important that we pass these things on. So young people find these stories and tell these stories, recount these stories, have children to recount the stories to you, have children to talk about being loved and wanting to be loved. Ask them, how would they like to be loved? How do they know that they're loved, right? Have children talk about those things, right? So we need to be pro-Black. And let me just say, in case anybody's out there, I know couldn't possibly be anybody in this group, but anybody who might hear this later, to be pro-Black does not mean to be anti-white, right? Just because I'm uplifting me and mine doesn't mean that I'm putting down anyone. So this is really about how do we cope? How do we sustain ourselves, and to know what have we done historically, and to pass those messages on. Because if you leave it to the world to tell your children who they are, they're going to get a negative message, right? And they'll never make it. So that's a long way to respond. But Dr. White, did you want to chime in on that?
No, I was saying we have tons of questions now, and so I was wondering how you wanted me to field them to you both, Dr. West and Dr. Westo. I did want to comment on the poll a while back. I saw that two people said that anti-Black messages encourage Black children to achieve, and I wanted to say, I get why they said that, because speaking to your point earlier, Dr. West-Olatunji, where you talked about how Black love is invisible, how many of us had to use anti-Black messages as motivation to achieve in spite of. And so those negative messages, we use that as fuel to say, you know what, I'm not going to be that thing you said I could only be, right? To really go against it. And so while I see why those people chose that, we know that overall those messages are harmful. And so we have to make sure that we are, combating that and equipping our youth with some armor so that they can know, what's inside of them and really lean into love. So we have tons of questions. I guess I'll start with, how can we prioritize and nurture Black love in a society that often marginalizes or stereotypes Black relationships?
I'm going to answer that one because I was going to add another comment. So, yeah, we have to be very, very proactive, right? And so if we are silent about something, we allow misperceptions, distortions of who we are, of what Black love really is, to be the main narrative. We have to say that we are consciously and deliberately doing things to counter that narrative. And so one thing that we need, I'm going to say this real quick. Okay, so some of these anti-Black attitudes, or attitudes that have negative views, that reflect negative views of Black love, they are dangerous when it's across group, but when it's within group, it's lethal, right? And so a lot of times we have to be able to, I think that it's pretty clear a lot of times when it's a person from a group outside of your own. So if we're talking about mainstream people or white people, or maybe even Latinx, or anybody really, but when we're talking about anti-Black attitudes, and you are a Black person, you are a Black parent, you are a Black teacher, that is even more detrimental. So it's all bad, but it can be even worse, right? So it becomes this thing of, we have to check ourselves, all of us, independent of, as Dr. West-Olatunji said, independent of our race, our gender, our ethnicity. We have to we all need to do a check, and we also have to have other people in our lives who can give us a check. because there's some things we've internalized, right? And we say and do without even thinking about it. So we need to be very conscious and say, and let me counter that. We have to make sure that we look around our classrooms, our homes. We have to look around our clinical environments, the juvenile justice, wherever we are, and say, do we have images that reflect positive relationships between Black people, right? So when we're talking about amongst parents and kids and their children, romantic love, whatever, do we have those images? What are we allowing our children to watch, and what are we reading? How do we tell the stories? I remember this really great intervention. I didn't intend it to be an intervention, but I remember I had two of my nieces at my house, and they were talking about their dating experiences. And I was saying, boys don't what? You haven't been to the movies? And I was just talking about like they don't do that anymore, or you guys just people hook up and, come over instead of going out somewhere and doing activities. It was like, let me show you what it looks like. And I remember, having this boyfriend who lived in Ohio and I lived in New York State at the time. And we met one summer and we were separated. I guess we hadn't started driving yet. So we were still young. I think we must have been like 15 or so. And the best way we could communicate is back then it cost money to talk on the phone. I'm aging myself. And so we would send each other letters. I remember talking to them and I was thinking, what are you thinking? Like, what do boys do when they really like you? And I was like, let me show you. Here's a good example. And I brought out all these letters. And over the course of about a year and a half, he had written me over 300 letters and I had numbered them on the back. And it was like, these are the letters. And I'd also written what he put inside. So I remember when he got a job, he would send me just something probably under $1. But he just would put in there, I would put, oh, he sent me this, or it was a little poem he sent, or it was a photo of him doing something, or whatever he sent to me. I wrote on the back of the envelope what it was he had included. And once he got a job, he sent me more stuff, and nothing super expensive. But it was just really lovely. And they were like, he wrote you 300 letters. And they're like, was he white? I'm like, no, he's a brother. I'm like, here's a picture. It's like, he did this. And I did the same thing. I mean, I sent over probably 200 letters, but, I was trying to keep up with them. And it was just expressions of love. I also had a boyfriend who sent me audio cassettes back in the day with audio cassettes. I'm aging myself again. But he would just record these audio cassettes. Sometimes he'd just be driving in the car and he would just say, this is what I'm doing. This is what I miss. Because he was at a different college from me and I was out in California, he was in New York, and he would just send those to me. And he would write me letters and he'd have like a different color ink. Sometimes it would be metallic, might be gold on black paper. And I was just showing them, this is what guys do, not all guys, but yes, this is the brother. Our brother did this. And it's like, so don't, believe the okie doke. The truth of the matter is that there are wonderful expressions and examples of Black love, and it's like brilliant. And it's like we have to be able to share those things. And to me, I'm like, oh, I just had them in a box somewhere, keeping them, thinking, okay, every now and then I'll go and grab one. But it was like, no, these little girls need to see this. You need to see. And so, you're being shortchanged. They can go a little bit deeper. And the same thing as, sharing it with my nephews and stuff so that they can see, hey, you need to come up a little, you're going to have to do a lot more than maybe your peers are doing. Like there's a whole lot more that you can do to show someone that you care, and even examples from history. I want the kind of love where I would think, with this man, like if he were free in the North, would he come all the way walking without a GPS, no credit card, to come and get me and hope I haven't moved on? He has to have faith that I haven't moved on with somebody else. I'm willing to take the chance. Would you do that? Some people wouldn't even bother. They're like, can you come over that I didn't put in effort, let alone walk all the way to come and get you? So it's like, short of that, you being shortchanged. And I want my money back. I want that kind of Black love. So it becomes not this Black love we see on TV, oftentimes, not the kind of love that people are telling us about, but the ones that, so also the other piece is having elders talk about, what their experiences have been. And how did they get with granddad? And what was it that he did that really impressed her? A lot of times those stories are really very powerful. So it becomes, yeah, I know what you see, or I know what you've heard, but what's the reality of it? Or a different reality, right? I'm not saying those stories are not real. There are people do have those negative experiences with Black love. But the most common version of Black love, and the type that we should be aspiring to, are the stories that we need to tell and we need to think about, and we need to see and amplify. And those voices need to be heard, and we need to make sure we preserve them before they go.
Absolutely. And so we're definitely not going to get to all of our questions this day, but I don't know if Dr. Westo or Dr. West want to maybe address, a lot of people are asking questions about Black love in specific populations, like Black love in with children and mixed race families, or how do we lift up these messages in places where you can't say DEI with all of these, restrictions now being placed on populations, or how do we educate law enforcement in regards to what you talked about earlier, Dr. West, in regards to what fictive kin is and how important it is to the Black family. And then finally, just given who we are in our backgrounds, counseling strategies that we recommend to, really raise this message. And so that's kind of a summary of all the questions coming in. If Dr. Westo or Dr. West wants to comment on that before we move forward.
I think some of the upcoming slides answer some of those questions. I'm thinking we may have to have another webinar on something. Be surprised. I know that Dr. West-Olatunji usually starts to answer some of those questions in the chat, but today we're one person short. So we're going to do what we can. I'm going to yield to Dr. West-Olatunji to decide whether we move on with the slides and see which questions are answered through the slides. What do you want to do, Dr. Westo?
Let's move through some of these slides that do address what do we do next, and then we'll circle back to some of these questions. So Dr. White, hold us accountable, please, for coming back to some of those questions.
Okay, so some interventions. This is my slide. Okay, so of course, we always talk about a lot of different things that are really useful. The things that we often talk about are things like, well, we're going to talk about today. Let me just get to this real quick. So some of the things we can do is we've provided examples in this webinar today. We can use things like poetry. We can use books and research articles to educate people. We can also really tap into the emotions of things by getting into even a sermon. I remember one of my favorite, most memorable sermons was a sermon about Black hair, right? And how we need to love our hair. And I will never forget that as a teenager or a young adult. There was a really great sermon about that. So it's really about being able to find all these different ways in which we can tap into this idea about Black love. Slave narratives are awesome. This man, I believe. Oh, maybe not. Music therapy. So we have a playlist that we are going to share with you. You can use music. You can use the actual audio. You can use the lyrics from music to illustrate some of these principles that we've talked about, some of the things that we know about Black love. Black love is at its finest. And also dance therapy, especially for, well, anyone really. But I would think also particularly for couples to learn how to move and sync. And might also be useful, especially if it's also combined with music that also highlights the beauty and brilliance and power of Black love. The resources that we have to share with you, we can put in the chat. There's some quotes, and we'll share some quotes toward the end that we've identified specifically. There's some quotes from Black history makers. There's some quotes about Black love in general. There's a playlist that Dr. West-Olatunji has identified that we're going to share with you as well. And then there's some journal articles for which I drew a lot of the data and the data slides to share with you. I want to highlight the article by Skipper Marks and Dolahite that looks at lessons learned from a qualitative study on long-term, happy, healthy Black couples and what the factors were associated with their success. So that might be really useful for couples to take a look at.
So taking action. And I have another poem. This one is by Derek Walcott, who I think comes from the Caribbean. Love After Love, so you can read that. So what are some things that you can do? You've been asking about what are some of the strategies. So the first is take inventory. Take a look around wherever you work, wherever you are interacting with Black children and other children of color. Take a look, do an inventory with fresh eyes. Take a look. How does the environment reflect the children, and how do they reflect Black excellence or excellence within their own cultural context? So look at the wall hangings, the books. If you're at home, look at movies, videos. At school, what do you have in the library, and so on? Look at the posters around in the classroom. At work, what do you have around that support that? Ensure that everything, not just the books, but everything reflects positive representations of Black love, and Black love again in this broad category. Assess your physical surroundings. What kind of posters do you have up? What kind of artwork do you have up? I have found that when I've had artwork up and children ask, what is that? I get to tell them about various artists from the diaspora all over. So they get to see and they ask questions. I love being asked to talk to elementary school kids. And I remember one time I was asked to do this remotely. So I didn't think that was going to go well, to talk to a bunch of fourth and fifth graders about 3 different classes, and they Zoom me in to talk. And I thought, they're not going to be able to relate to me at all. And so I was talking about what I do. I think I was talking about being a professor or something. And I was telling them about the research I do and having an opportunity to interact with various communities. And then it was time for questions. And their questions were, how do I get to go with you on some of these trips to go? Because I had ignited their imagination about going to India, going to Australia, and talking about my experiences with people. They were excited and interested. And because of that, they wanted to know how could they, study in order to do the things that I do. So rather than them talking about my day to day, they were talking about some of the other things that I got a chance to do. But it was that excited them. So don't be, think broadly about sharing the world and opening up possibilities for children. Reflect on your practices. Select a goal of reading a book each month written by a Black author. This is for everyone that celebrates Black love. Read to children on a regular basis, right? Children love to be read to. And they also like to read to others, as long as you create a non-judgmental environment. Don't stop them every time they mispronounce or anything. Let them go ahead and get engaged with the story, and you can work on the other things after. But children do like to be read to, and they like to read. Visit Black museums, bookstores, and exhibits. Take them to art exhibits. Take them to museums. They really love that, and the research supports that. So children who are taken to cultural events score higher than children whose parents don't take them anywhere or teachers don't take them anywhere. So there's evidence for that. Go to performances. I can't tell you how much children love live performances like dance. And then they love talking to the dancers, or going to a play and then talking to the actors. They love that. And they then see themselves as capable of doing those things. Even if it's community theater, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It could be community theater. It doesn't have to be anything really big or expensive. Challenge anti-Black attitudes and beliefs, and do that according to your personality. So if you're an extrovert and you're about it, hey, Go out there, protest, etc. If you're an introvert, and for you, the first step for you is just writing a letter or posting social media, right? There are things that can be done. Everybody can do something to resist anti-Black attitudes.
Okay, and we also want to inform you that we always have a number of different videos available on our videos on demand library. So you can scan this, you can see there's a lot. So there's some free videos and there's some videos that are relatively low cost that you can access. So one that we're going to recommend, because somebody did ask about parenting, is our training on Afrocentric parenting, really focusing on what it is that Black parents who have children who are academically successful, right, who exhibit academic excellence. What do they do? What are the 5 parenting skills that we've identified through the research that really make a difference in terms of the academic success of Black children? Well, you can always enroll and to be able to access that training at your leisure. So this is one that we recommend. But there are others as well. We have a lot of different topics that really counter the narrative of who we are, who children are, who people of color are in general, and particularly Black communities. So all of that is going to go a long way in terms of enhancing your awareness and your skills in terms of intervening with Black youth and other youth of color.
And on that note, oh, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Now, on that note, next month I'll be facilitating, of course, with my esteemed colleagues, Dr. Westo and Dr. West, Loss, Grief, and Incarceration, which is part 2 of a 3-part series. And this next month, I'll be focusing on supporting parents of incarcerated youth in the Black community, right? And so we know that there are several facts we know about Black youth and how they are criminalized and pathologized and how they are targeted. And so we know that anytime we are working with youth and supporting youth, that means we're working with parents, we're working with families, we're working with communities as well. So join us next month as we use a culture-centered lens and talk about how systemic factors, cultural values, and community dynamics shape the grief process for families who are supporting youth who are incarcerated in the Black community, and also learn some strategies for offering meaningful support and fostering resilience so that we can help our community continue to develop healthy coping mechanisms.
Awesome.
And again, we want to ask that you go ahead and take a couple of minutes before you leave today to complete our post-webinar survey. We have the link to the survey in the chat. Let's see. We always include your input in terms of recommendations for upcoming webinars, what you liked and didn't like most about the sessions. And we also get information from you about how you plan to take one step, whether it's changing some of the images in your environment, whether it's some of these activities we've talked about and interventions. But we always look to hear from you, and we use that information. So it's very valuable. Of course, this is our save the date, and so you can look back, see what we've done in the past and what we plan to do in the future in terms of upcoming trainings. And I think we're going to move on to the next slide. It's just a reminder to follow us on social media and to wish you a happy Valentine's Day.
Absolutely. So before we start giving you some of the love quotes, and we've actually reserved time so we can do some of these love quotes for you, and also to invite you to put some love quotes in the chat. Feel free to do that. So we're not only giving love, we'd like to receive love as well. Mutuality is a very healthy characteristic. So feel free to do that. I've answered almost all of the questions, either live or in writing. The last one really is about the future law enforcement officers. So I say kudos to you. We need honest, good law enforcement officers now more than ever. So we encourage you and we send you love. Absolutely. So what can we do? There was another question also that sort of falls in this, and that is I remember working with a client once, and they were dealing with big structures and they were having difficulty. And I recommended that they buy one of the Burr Rabbit books. And we read one of the Burr Rabbit stories in session. And what's wonderful about Burr Rabbit, and Burr Rabbit actually has its roots in West Africa, by the way. It comes via the Caribbean with the Aunt Nancy stories. It is the Anansi stories coming through the Aunt Nancy, and then it arrives in the United States as Burr Rabbit stories. But the stories are about how someone very small outwits someone bigger. And the message that we send down the generations is we can outsmart these people. We've done it before, we'll do it again. Don't worry. Just sit and think, how can I do this? How can I finagle? How can I be creative? How can I outwit, outsmart, and be able to do that? So we have to figure out ways to do that. How do we talk about DEI? How do we talk about justice? How do we talk about oppression? How do we talk about race-based stress? How do we talk about any of this stuff that is a reality? It's something we deal with every single day. How do we do that? That is not a rhetorical question. That's a question to be answered every single day. This is how we're going to make it. If you can't figure it out, talk to somebody who can. Talk to elders, talk to people and ask them, what have you done in the past? This is not the first time that we've had to deal with this kind of adversity, and yet we have overcome. So what is it that we need to do? So whether it's how do we talk about family members who are not blood family? How do we interpret that for mainstream culture? We have been doing that for generations, right? So it's about figuring out what do we put on there to just keep the party going? How do we not give in? How do we continue to resist? So I would give that as sort of a general idea of how do we stay faithful to do the work that we need to do. And with that, let me see. I got a list here. All right. So again, I remind you, I have some to give, but you might have some that you want to give as well. And so I love this one by Toni Morrison. Don't ever think I fell for you or fell over you. I didn't fall in love. I rose in it. So that's one.
Well, I'll go next. So a long, long time ago, when I was probably under 10, or maybe a 10 or so, I'm not sure, I visited my sister, Dr. West-Olatunji, at Dartmouth College, and she was part of this pro-Black, super, I don't know, down with people group, and they were doing a, I guess, spoken word kind of thing, or they were reading poetry, and I wanted to participate, and they were like, well, give her a really short poem to memorize, right? So they gave me this poem, and I have never been able to find the author. Again, I don't remember it. Such a long time ago, as you can tell. But this is the poem. Black is the color of my heart. Black is the color of my mind. Black is the color of my soul. But not because I'm a Black person, but because Black is the essence of all things.
Here,
So
here.
love is the essence of all love. We are the original people. We from Black people came all people, right? And so that is a reminder that Black love is the essence of all love.
And so I'm putting two of my favorite quotes in the chat, and I'll share with you. My partner sent me a poem a couple of months ago, and one of my favorite quotes from that poem is Black love is the perfect hodgepodge of ha-has and ahas.
Mm, I love that. I love that one. Oh, this,
Ahas and ahas. Okay.
I love it. Ooh. Oh, I love those. I love those. Yes. Mm-hmm. Let's see. I got another one. This is let's see. James Baldwin, love takes off the mask we fear we cannot live without and know we cannot live within. Hmm.
Yeah, I put that one in the chat too.
Oh, there you go.
Oh,
That's
yeah, we're thinking the same
that's
thing.
synergy right there.
Hmm. Anybody else? Hey, well, you all go out there and find you some quotes and share those quotes with people that you love.
I'm gonna put the
Absolutely.
link in. I'm gonna put the link in. Let me see if I
Great, great. And Rashida Pankey contacted me. Her organization has a series of Black History Month workshops. She's put the link in the chat. So if anybody else has any knowledge about some Black history activities going on, we usually send something out about what's going on at the African American Museum in DC. And I think I sent out an email campaign about that. Please do. So, yes, go out there and be Black. Go out there and support Black. Go out there and just enjoy the wonderful love of Black love. Absolutely. And as always, we close out with a bunch of love coming out of New Orleans, Louisiana. And so we say to you, thank you very much, Asante Sana. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for being part of the CREST program Communiversity. Make sure that you follow up and get more knowledge, go through some of our training programs, and learn to decolonize.